morning and welcome to this America's Project Spotlight session, which is actually the last in our Breakbulk Europe Connect 21 World Project Expo series. We're so delighted to have you all here joining us today on the days that we should have been together in Bremen for Breakbulk Europe, and hope that you've been enjoying connecting, networking and learning from peers, albeit virtually, for this year. Before we get started with today's session, I would just quickly like to go over a couple of housekeeping points. So firstly, this webinar will be available on demand after the session, so not to worry if you miss anything, you will be able to access the content at a later date. And if you have any questions for our speakers, please do ask them in the Q&A tab on your right-hand side, and we're going to share these questions with the speakers and publish their responses in our Breakbulk One newsletter over the coming weeks. During this session, we're going to be looking at two critical project sectors in the Americas, mining and infrastructure. So I'll shortly be handing over to our moderator for this session, Leslie Meredith, who's the Marketing and Media Director here at Breakbulk. But before I do that, I would just like to say a very big thank you to our sponsor for this session, Ocean Network Express, and thank them for their support. So we'll now play a short video from Ocean Network Express before kicking off with the session.
Now our World Project Expo turns to the Americas, where we will look at three major project sectors. First up is mining, and I'd like to welcome Alex Asprint, Director of Logistics, Supply Chain, and Commercial Strategies for Fluor, who is joining us from Santiago, Chile. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Leslie. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy to see you. It has been a long time. So tell me, how are things going for you and the projects throughout South America?
First of all, thank you for having me here. Things are going well. I mean, it's been a very tough year, the last 12 months since, COVID hit, and it's hit the region particularly hard. It's been difficult to navigate through that. Countries have responded in different ways, but where we have our projects, we have our flagship project for mining in the south of Peru, and COVID hit us in the middle of the height of our execution. And despite of all that, we really pulled the people together, our teams together. Of course, our partners that helped us navigate through that, and we managed to really overcome the adversities. It was difficult. I won't sugarcoat it, but we managed well. We also finished a major project in the north of Chile during the peak of the pandemic, so that was another huge achievement for our office. And we started executing a new project also here in Chile during this period. So, all in all, if I put things on a scale, I think that we've had despite all of the wind against us, we've had a good year, and we're looking forward to to the next cycle as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, it does seem as though the mining industry is faring better than, say, oil and gas in this, over the last year and prospects looking forward. What is your outlook for the industry?
I personally see it optimistic. Mining is, I've mentioned this before, it's cyclical. I think that this new cycle is going to be a little bit more tapered. There are some positive signs around this. We're working on a number of feeds and prospects. Not just in the region, but throughout the mining world. You have to put that also in the context of the geopolitical situation here in the region. The two countries really that drive mining around here are Peru and Chile, of course. Chile being the number one producer of copper, Peru the number two producer of copper. Peru is about to have a runoff election in less than a month, on June 6th, which will have a presidential election of two very different opposed visions of how they want to drive the country. COVID has had an impact on the growth in the country, and I'll get into how this relates to what the outlook is in the future. In the case of Chile, Chile's had, it's managing the COVID pandemic in terms of the vaccination rates a little bit better, and so I think that's driving the economy. It's driving the projections here. The IMF has recently revised the projection for economic growth to 6.2% for this year, which is really good for Chile. So the outlook looks positive on this end. So a lot of that is driven, of course, by the demand of commodities, in particular copper. So the projection of growth in China and also the U.S. that this year it has a very high possibility that it will surpass the economic growth in China during this year, which is really good. It's a projection from Goldman Sachs. It's not mine personally, but it is a hard fact, and therefore a lot of that demand that is going to be driven by that growth will have an impact on mining projects in the region. The price of copper has hit a record high, a really historic record high, and so all when you converge all those aspects, I think they're the good variables that will contribute to the growth in the region when it comes down to mining. So the outlook is positive. I mentioned about what we did during the last year during the pandemic. It was difficult to execute our projects, but it really stress tested our team. Our company flew really pulled together. We generated a lot of value for our clients. We completed projects, we continued executing projects, and we started projects in the middle of all this pandemic. So I think that we have outpaced our competitors in the region. We have really solidified our position in the region as the premier EPC company for mining projects. So the outlook, I see it optimistically from my view.
Excellent. One of the trends that we're hearing so much about is transition somewhat away from oil and gas as an energy source to renewables. How might that impact the mining industry?
It has an impact. I mean, mining is energy intensive. Any mining activity, it's water intensive in certain types of minerals that you mine. There is a lot of processing. The tailings aspect of it is also important. So the major mining companies are really driving towards a greener operation, if you will. So it is an important aspect of it. We as Fluor have a solid philosophy around that, and we want to go along with our partners and help them really achieve those objectives that they have in the future. In this part of the world, for example, when for some of the mines that are water intensive, Desalination is a big aspect of it. We have the long line of ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and between Peru and Chile. So desalination plants are becoming more the norm, really, for to support mining operations. So there is a big drive, and we're going along, of course, with our clients on this.
Excellent. And are you seeing more starting from scratch or greenfield mining projects, or do you see more plant or operations expansions, that kind of thing?
It's a combination of both, Leslie. It's a combination of both because Chile has a lot more mature mining industry than Peru. It started, a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades before, really to drive the large projects. Peru still has some of the greenfield projects that will have to be developed from scratch. In the case of Chile, there are some, but the majority of the work here is really expansions and upgrades and things of that nature. So really, if you look at it from a regional standpoint, it's a combination of both. When you go to the other side of the Andes, Argentina, which is it sort of sits in the middle. I mean, it has had some mining projects that have been executed in the past. The geopolitical situation of Argentina is a little bit unique, and so there are some prospects, there are some developments that are on the radar that are to be happening in Argentina. In that case, there would be greenfield development. So you look at it from a regional standpoint, really it's a combination, and it's related to the maturity of the industry in each one of the countries. Yes.
All right. Let's turn to one last question. Mining is often considered a traditional and conservative industry, but what we're seeing across all industries is a drive toward innovation for efficiencies and economics, of course. What are you seeing in the area of new technology or innovation?
Two words: digital mining. And really what we're seeing now is clients driving the digital mining philosophy, beyond what the traditional mine, as you call it, is doing. And so, we are very much a part of that. We're supporting our clients for operations that have a very significant component of digital mining. And what it really comes down to is the mining of the future. There's a lot of more automation when it comes to the operations, anywhere from driverless mining trucks, for example, equipment that is operated autonomously and things of that nature. So there's a big push. I think that mining companies are really taking a heap into the mine of the future. So it's very much a part of the new mine developments here. Yeah.
Wow, that is great. Well, we want to circle back to you in the future and see that in action. That would be exciting.
Absolutely, Leslie.
All right. Well, Alex, I want to thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we will be able to meet in person relatively soon.
Sure. Always a pleasure, Leslie, and look forward to visiting with everyone. Hopefully there will be a Breakbulk this year, so we'll be able to visit.
Yes, Houston, end of September. So put that on your calendar.
Excellent. We'll be there.
All right. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
World Project Expo Americas will now take a look at infrastructure projects in the U.S. And I am delighted to introduce Andrew Gardner, President of Kiewit Supply Network from Kiewit, one of the largest EPCs in the country, and certainly well known for its infrastructure projects. So welcome, Andrew. It's great to have you join us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good. So give us a little insight on how the trials, let's say, of the last year have impacted infrastructure projects.
Certainly, I think the biggest impact has been obviously our first focus on any project is safety. And so I think, just being able to identify and develop safety protocols to make sure that our folks out on our jobs and even our folks back in our offices, for those that were there, we were able to provide a safe working environment. There was certainly a shift in doing that. And you know, obviously we had some impacts on the supply chain, getting some of our materials. You know, we at this point, I'm not sure that there's a market that doesn't source procurement globally. Even a company like Kiewit, where, you know, certainly the vast majority of our work is in the U.S. and Canada. Our materials are sourced globally, and so with the pandemic and the impacts in China and Italy and Southeast Asia, really around the globe, we certainly saw some impacts in lead time and availability of certain materials. So those were certainly the biggest impacts.
Have those diminished now? Are you seeing improvement?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, unfortunately, what was so foreign to us 12 months ago has become fairly normal. You know, wearing masks and social distancing and all those kinds of things, and the way that we schedule our work, the way that we schedule our deliveries and things like that, and the way that our suppliers have dealt with it. They've obviously learned a lot, just like we have. And you know, our suppliers and our subcontractors are such a huge part of our success that we really rely on them. And we've really, I think, worked well with our suppliers, our subcontractors, and our clients to develop really comprehensive plans across the board for how we intend to support the work that we've executed over the last year. And so I think that's been instrumental. I think we continue to see, you know, especially more recently, I would say it's in the logistics realm, and being able to secure transportation for overseas materials. That seems to be a significant challenge today. And I would tell you, I do think availability of materials is quickly becoming a higher and higher priority. I think, you know, a lot of us have leveraged our buying power and our relationships with our suppliers and subcontractors, because they are partners with us, that they've really been able to leverage their supply chain. But I think, unfortunately, they're at the limit where there's really nothing to leverage anymore. And it is truly an impact of being able to get our hands on the materials to be able to do the fabrication of the equipment.
Absolutely. All right, so let's look ahead now. What is the outlook for infrastructure projects coming online, say, over the next 12 months or so?
You know, we saw over the last 12 months, we've seen a number of projects, you know, kind of pushed to the right. A lot of uncertainty with the pandemic, I think, caused a lot of companies and government agencies to kind of hit the pause button. You know, in some aspects, I would tell you that we've seen projects that we've been able to execute maybe even more successfully because there's been less traffic on the road. You know, where we're doing a road project or a bridge project, and there's simply less traffic because people are working from home. And we've been able to make some minor gains in some of those projects. But in reality, I would tell you that a lot of the projects we expected to see in the last 12 months pushed to the right. And I think the next 12 will bring about a lot of renewed interest in new infrastructure projects. I think it's just going to be a question of, can we get our hands on the materials to be able to support that work?
Absolutely. So making headlines right now is Biden's infrastructure bill. If that gets passed, what impact might that have on projects? What types of projects would we see as a result of it? And more importantly, perhaps, is what might the timeline look like?
You know, I would tell you, I think we're going to see a lot of mass transit, whether that's high-speed rail or road, bridge, highway work. I think we'll see a lot of that type of work. I think we're also going to see a lot of water infrastructure. I think there's definitely a growing demand for some of that. And you know, we're seeing a lot of uptick in different industrial types of projects as well. So, you know, I think, obviously, I think part of it has been earmarked for power delivery and the transmission grid. And so I think I would certainly expect to see more of that. Although I would tell you that we're seeing some of that uptick now, just with as states are starting to reopen, and like I said, there's certainly a better outlook on the next 12 months than there was a year ago. I think we're starting to see some of that already.
Okay, that sounds like good news. The other question that I wanted to ask you is we saw throughout the pandemic a growing awareness of and desire to move away from fossil fuels to green energy. You already mentioned benefit that you saw, being able to proceed with projects more quickly, perhaps with not as much traffic on the road. So that's great. How do you think the larger shift to green energy might affect infrastructure projects?
Well, for Kiewit, I can tell you that a significant source of our business over the last decade has been fossil fuel power plants. And so it has definitely been a shift for us. I can tell you that we have engaged heavily in the solar and wind power generation markets. And we've got a number of those projects under contract right now that we're executing. And certainly we're seeing more and more of them. And I expect that to continue for sure. Again, I think it comes back to the availability of, by and large, the solar jobs are PV panels. And it's just a question of how much production can we get out of the PV panel suppliers, the racking suppliers, and can they support delivery in quantities that will support some of these projects?
Understood. All right. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up for our quick fire look at infrastructure projects in the U.S. I'm so happy that you joined us today, and I certainly hope that we will see you in person at Breakbulk Americas in Houston this fall.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.